On this Thursday night, anxiety mounts over the spread of COVID-19. COVID-19 is beginning to disrupt lives around the world, from flight cancellations and travel restrictions to warnings of serious economic implications. There are now confirmed cases in at least 50 countries. The Dow Jones plummeted almost 1,200 points. That's the biggest one-day point decline in history.
People should not be walking around with masks. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face.
Chances are, if you do have it, you will recover. Based on the Korea data, 99.3% of people recover, 99.3% of people recover, 99.3% of people recover.
Isn't this going to be longer than 15 days? How long do you think people should expect to be at home, essentially?
Well, what you're talking about is our 15 Days to Stop the Spread initiative.
15 Days to Stop the Spread initiative.
We feel like if we can get America to all pitch in for the next 15 days, we can flatten the curve, which is a term that you've been hearing a lot, not overwhelm our healthcare systems.
So 15 days is enough?
15 days is likely not going to be enough to get us all the way through, but we really need to lean into it now so that we can bend the curve in the next 15 days. And at that point, we'll reassess.
Okay. Dr. Adams, I got the message. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. We really appreciate it. I know it's a busy time.
Now more than ever, we need to remember that we're all human.
The coronavirus not only damaging physical health, but mental health as well. Ms. Elijah, the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network, fears as the spread of COVID-19 grows, so will the number of suicides.
I think the long-term effects of the COVID-19 are going to be devastating.
In Knox County alone, there have been 10 suicides in just less than a week, 9 of them within 48 hours. There's already been a 62% increase in conversations through the crisis text line compared to this time last year. The number one topic was depression and sadness then. This time around, it's stress and anxiety.
All of the crisis call centers in Tennessee are experiencing a spike in the number of calls.
And in Tennessee particularly, there's been a lot of stress, to say the least, from the effects of the COVID-19 outbreak to the tornadoes that hit earlier last month.
If anyone needs help, you can always call NAMI or the 24-hour mental health crisis line at the numbers you see on your screen. You can also text TN to 741-741.
Florida went under a stay-at-home order this morning, but what's changed isn't clear. This beach is still open, and religious services are allowed.
We don't really know how all these measures work, because it's never been tried on American society before.
Florida, Texas, and several other southern states didn't issue statewide mandates until this week. This map, showing distances people traveled based on cell data, indicates they traveled further in states that were late to issue stay-at-home orders. People looking for outdoor exercise have been jamming parks like this one. Here in Houston, they have closed the playgrounds and the basketball courts, but officials say it has been a challenge getting people to obey those orders.
Meanwhile, face coverings while out in public are now mandatory in Riverside County, and residents who don't comply could face a hefty fine. CBS 2's Candace Crone reports from Riverside with more on the new order.
And the fine for violating the order is $1,000 per day per violation.
A grim reality reflected in the jobs of the staff members and workers here at the Suicide Prevention Center, who are seeing an incredible uptick in the number of calls related to COVID. At first, in February, they were having maybe around 20 calls or so. That number has increased exponentially. At the end of March, it was somewhere around 1,800 plus. And then 1 out of every 5 demonstrated or had thoughts about suicide. And so they're dealing with an incredible number. More and more, the numbers are reflecting a change in how society is reflecting this, dealing with the COVID crisis. At first, it was calls about safety, about public health and infecting their loved ones and neighbors and coworkers. And now it's moved into really worrying about, their jobs at home, worrying about paying rent, worrying about, being solvent as far as their business. And as these calls are continuing, so too are the workers' fears who are on the other end of the line. A lot of the staff members here, a lot of the people who are answering the calls are volunteers who have actually lost their day jobs so they're experiencing this as well. Like nurses and doctors, these are frontline workers. They have to staff and maintain this hotline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like nurses and doctors, they're dealing with people that are sick, if not at sometimes very close to death.
When you see a crowd, when you see a line that's not distanced, when you see a supermarket that's too crowded, anything, you can report it right away so we can get help there to fix the problem. And now it's as simple as taking a photo. All you gotta do is take the photo and put the location with it, and bang, send a photo like this, and we will make sure that enforcement comes right away.
This will become the new norm in the state of Illinois, people wearing face masks in public. It was already advised by the CDC, but today Governor Pritzker made it a requirement. City and state leaders recognize another month of social distancing will be difficult, but they insist it's working and saving lives.
I'm asking you to hold on for just a little while longer to help make sure that we all see through to the other side of this struggle.
Approximately 10:30 this morning, the Milwaukee Police Department received a call from an individual who stated that his family was dead. Upon our arrival, we discovered 5 deceased victims at this location.
A horrific scene inside this home on 12th and Hadley.
The subject who called is taken into custody, and there is no active threat that we know of right now.
Police say the victims ranged in age 14 to 41.
There is a child who's at the hospital right now, and I think that child is fine.
I am sick to my stomach right now with this violence, you know.
It's too much stuff going on. It's already coronavirus and stuff going on, so what makes y'all people just need to think before they react.
Yeah, I feel like it's my own family. I feel just like my own family.
This is a emotional thing for everybody involved, even if, folks didn't know them directly. To hear somebody lost their child, to see somebody crying because they potentially lost a child is emotional for everybody.
The news of the shooting drew dozens of people out of their homes despite the governor's safer at home order. Video from News Chopper 12 captured the crowd gathered along the police line, people standing side by side. The area of 12th and Locust is in the 53206 zip code. According to the Milwaukee Health Department, that area has seen 93 positive cases of coronavirus. 12 News' Derek Rose is live on the scene with the social distancing nightmare, Derek.
Especially in a time of social distancing and staying at home, we know that while we as a community are safer at home, there's many individuals who are not.
A massacre in the honeycombs.
There were dead bees all over the front of the hive, all over the bottom board, and they all had all been chopped to bits. They were decapitated.
60,000 honeybees torn apart in a savage attack. About a month later, the alleged attacker was revealed. This Asian giant hornet found in Blaine, Washington, just a couple miles from McFall's property.
A new study is warning that the next health crisis triggered by COVID-19 may actually be a wave of suicides. The study warns that the isolation and the anxiety from the lockdown may be responsible for as many as 75,000 drug overdoses and suicides over the next decade.
Yeah, these deaths of despair numbers are very unsettling, and these assumptions are that based on previous economic downturns, that we're going to have a number of suicides, that overdoses with regard to drugs and also alcohol abuse is going to increase significantly. And the graphs from this particular study are really startling. This morning I got numbers where our unemployment rate is now 14.7%. Basically 20.5 million jobs have been lost just in April. So we're looking at the three things: unemployment, isolation, and of course the uncertainty. And so our mental health issues are substantial, and I think the numbers go from 25,000 to 150,000, and the mean that you have on the screen is 75,000 deaths of despair. So that's a real problem going forward, where they've given $16 billion to the airline industry. So it seems that there's a big disparity between what is real and not real, and we're going to be facing these deaths of despair as we go forward. It may get really bad.
We just want to remind you, if you or someone you know is having suicidal thoughts, or they are in emotional distress, or you are in emotional distress, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline can help. It is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it is free of charge. You just call the number you see there on your screen. That's 1-800-273-8255, 1-800-273-8255.
The Pima County Health Department reports 23 suicides over the last couple of months, and 3 of those minors. Program Manager Mark Person with the Pima County Health Department says this new spike in suicides was first reported at the start of the pandemic. In this graphic from the Health Department, you could see the increase in week-to-week numbers from February to March. The sharpest increase was 15 suicides within 14 days. Person says it's normal for a crisis situation to have an effect on people's mental and emotional health, especially those who are already struggling. 79% of the suicides reported in this spike occurred in people with mental or physical illnesses.
People are asking, am I safe? Am I going to be okay?
That's how psychologist Gustavo Perez says his patients have been reacting over the past few months.
And right now, the truth is that all of us are struggling.
But some more than others.
The folks that live in poverty, that don't have computers, that don't have families here locally or live alone, are in a much different situation. So not only are they isolated from people, but they're also isolated from resources.
The Pima County Health Department will continue to monitor this data every single day, but it's important to remember that even in isolation, there are resources available to you.
Minneapolis is on edge tonight. The African American community is demanding accountability for the death of a black man after police restrained him during an arrest.
A day after anger in the streets resulted in tear gas and flash grenades, it was the mayor of Minneapolis expressing impatience with the process of justice. The white police officer is seen kneeling on his neck several minutes past the point when Floyd became unresponsive.
Says an independent autopsy shows Floyd died of asphyxia due to neck and back compression.
That news could certainly ignite things and make calls for a different charge, one from third-degree murder up to first-degree murder.
This is the second weekend in a row we've had to tell you about multiple children being killed by gunfire in Chicago. A total of 16 people killed this weekend. 3 of them were children. Grand total of 63 people shot this weekend. And now a group of Chicago business owners are putting up a big pot of money to ensure that those shooters of these babies are caught. The youngest victim killed this weekend was 20-month-old Sincere Gaston. He was shot in the chest while riding in his car seat near 60th and Halsted Saturday. His mother was grazed by a bullet as well. 10-year-old Lena Nunez died that evening after being hit in the head by a stray bullet. She was inside a second-floor apartment in Logan Square when bullets came through the window in the 3500 block of West Dickens. Police believe the stray bullets came from 2 groups firing at each other outside. Then there was a 17-year-old killed in Humboldt Park that same day during a fight. An 8-year-old girl also shot while sitting inside on the couch at 66th and Southwood in West Inglewood. Luckily, she did survive with a graze wound to her head, though. Just last weekend, 106 people shot, including 3-year-old Makai James and 13-year-old Amaria Jones, both of whom were killed during the deadliest weekend of the year. A newly formed group called I'm Telling, Don't Shoot is now offering $50,000 in reward money to help find shooters in the cases of the littlest victims. We're talking about Makai and Sincere. The business owners are backed by Inglewood Alderman Stephanie Coleman, and they even showed the cash during yesterday's news conference.
If 50 won't get you, we're going to put up another 25. If that 75 don't get you, we're going to put up 100. So you telling me with $100,000 reward, nobody's going to say nothing?
So to report information in those two cases, you can call the tip line at 312-747-8380. And also a $2,000 reward is being offered in the case of Lena Nunez. We expect to hear from Police Superintendent David Brown later on this morning at 10:30.
We're following breaking news from overnight. Police in Milwaukee are investigating after 3 people were shot near 15th and Keefe. Police were called to that area after someone reported the shooting. We know this morning a 28-year-old and a 16-year-old, both males, are in the hospital. The third victim is a 25-year-old woman, also in the hospital. Police so far have not made any arrests in this case. Now, anyone with information about this shooting should call Crime Stoppers 224-8477. If your tip leads to an arrest, you could receive a reward.
In a city council meeting, city leaders unanimously passed a ruling bumping up fines for not wearing a mask from $250 to up to $2,000.
For the first time ever, the National Sexual Assault Hotline is seeing a record number of calls for help, and many of them are children.
Since March 1, over 50% of hotline users, victims have been minors.
It comes as the pandemic has triggered stay-at-home orders across the board. Now, many children experiencing sexual abuse are often isolated with their abuser.
When we think about child sexual abuse overall, most of the time it's committed by someone who is known and trusted by the child.
While there is a spike in calls to the national hotline, official reports of abuse to many state child protective agencies are down.
We've seen a lot fewer reports of child abuse come into state hotlines across the country. And that's because the kids' safety net really has broken down.
That safety net consists of teachers, nurses, and bus drivers, all of whom by law have to report any suspicion of child abuse.
People who are there every day for kids and the first to notice abuse aren't seeing them every day, so they're not reporting it.
As school districts continue to shift learning from the classroom to the students' own homes, RAIN President Scott Berkowitz says educators and supporters can still help.
Take that opportunity to ask them how they're doing, particularly if they see any change in behavior.
If a child is living with an abuser, experts say online platforms can help them reach out in a way phone calls might not offer the same privacy. Gwinnett County Public Schools say all of the district's counselors will have an e-class page just like teachers. As for Cobb, a district spokesperson said in part, quote, "Like our teachers, our school counselors are adapting to the way they support students' needs." And Fulton County Schools say they will continue their annual child abuse training and will be adding new material to include signs of abuse to look for in a virtual environment.
A 2-year-old girl, the latest victim of gun violence in the city of Milwaukee. Police tell us she was shot and killed last night near 105th and Mill Road, and that's on Milwaukee's far northwest side.
The 2-year-old girl died as she was being transported to the hospital, according to police. They say the shooting happened just before 7:30 last night. Some neighbors in the area say they never heard any gunshots, but they did hear a woman screaming for help.
It's disturbing. Very disturbing.
Police looking for the person responsible for a deadly shooting that happened in the middle of the day right out in the open on Thursday.
A very sad day for the River West community after it lost one of its own voices just a few days ago. Brunel Tramiel ran Expression's Journal. He was also a strong protester within the community. Police say he was shot and killed outside of his publication just a few days ago. People in the neighborhood say Brunel was a very outspoken man on various topics. He supported President Donald Trump. He also supported Black Lives Matter. He also supported police reform. This was a man many say was not afraid to speak his mind.
I didn't agree with a lot of his beliefs, but we were the immediate people here that were trying to figure out what can we do to make sure he passes on properly after this.
I also had a chance to speak with people in this neighborhood, obviously, as you can imagine, very distraught about the unexpected loss of life.
We lost a man who
cared about people, even if they were different than him, especially different than him. I can't.
At this point, the motive for this deadly shooting is unclear. Anyone with information about what happened are asked to call police.
Now, the way this pandemic has changed our lives can severely impact our mental health.
We've seen an increase in not only the suicide hotline numbers, but the attempts have been more serious.
Experts say suicide is a growing concern during the pandemic. Data showing the volume of calls on the rise and the types of calls even more alarming.
So kiddos are doing more serious things to attempt to take their lives.
University of Kansas Health System Miralac campus that helps kids with mental illness told 41 Action News back in April that they were seeing a decline in patients. They believe the virus was making patients and their families not come in. Now, that's not the case.
Overall, for summertime, our numbers are probably 50% higher than we typically would see.
There's also an increase in calls to the Johnson County Mental Health Hotline.
Crisis line, help you.
We've seen over the last 17 weeks about a 30% increase in the number of calls, both during the day and at night.
The director of the mental health department says they are hearing about people taking their lives on a weekly basis.
What we've seen since the pandemic started is we're aware of 23 deaths by suicide over the last 17 weeks, and that is unfortunately at a higher rate than we saw last year.
So places like Joco Mental Health are ramping up their hotline staff to try to help as many people as they can.
When the COVID pandemic started, we quickly saw that we were going to need to bolster the staffing there. So we have 3 staff working 24 hours a day to cover the calls.
Professionals say fear of the virus should not stop you from getting mental health care.
Let's provide ourselves some grace. Let's provide some kindness to one another.
Police say 8 people were shot, 1 person was killed overnight here in Milwaukee. Take a look. This video shows the scene where a 33-year-old man died after being shot just after 10:30 last night. This is near 24th and Maple. A 24-year-old woman was also shot and taken to the hospital there. Police are also searching for a pink Infiniti G35 right now that fled the scene after 4 people were shot at around 10:40 last night near 26th and Atkinson. The victims range in age from 23 to 36 years old. All of them were taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, and police say nobody has been arrested as they try to figure out what led up to that shooting. And police are also searching for suspects in 2 additional shootings. A 41-year-old man and a 57-year-old man were both shot overnight in Milwaukee as well. Police are now asking anyone with information to come forward.
Janari Ricks. I'm sorry, let me use a name that you're more familiar with. Michael Brown, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. We know who they are, right? We've heard those names at fucking nauseum, right? But Janari Ricks, who is that? Well, Janari Ricks is 9 years old. I'm sorry. Janari Ricks was 9 years old. These fucking monsters in Chicago figured that 9 years was enough. They figured that Janari Ricks was all done. You've seen all life has to offer, so we might as well kill you now. And that's exactly what they did. Some piece of garbage, and no offense to any pieces of garbage that may be watching, but some piece of garbage, animal, low-down, rotten piece of shit who needs to die soon shot this little boy in his chest.
Gunfire in at least 6 different Milwaukee neighborhoods this weekend has the people who live in them searching for peace.
People I spoke with in each of the neighborhoods say something needs to be done about the summer violence this year in Milwaukee. Between 8 p.m. on Saturday and 3:15 Sunday morning, police say they responded to 6 shooting events. No one was killed overnight. Officers say they responded to 3 more shootings this morning in the short stretch between 10:50 a.m. and 11:40.
The world is in a critical condition now.
Howard Jones also lives in another community impacted overnight, 11th and Ring. It's where police say a man was beaten during a robbery and shots were fired.
It seemed like the folks is going crazy. It used to be a time when there was more older folks graves than younger folks graves. But now, it's equal almost.
Ibrahim E. Boichi was indicted last year on charges that included rape, sodomy, strangulation, and abduction. But in April, Boichi's lawyer argued the novel coronavirus put him and other inmates in danger, and a circuit court judge allowed for his release on $24,000 bond, on the condition he stay confined to his Maryland home except for meeting with his lawyers or trial officials. According to the Post, police say the 33-year-old returned to Alexandria on July 29th and shot and killed Dominguez outside of her apartment.
Yeah, you guys may remember this did happen last week, and here's where it happened at 57th and Burnham in West Ellis at the Speedway gas station. I spoke with Scott LeCue. He says that it all started because a man confronted him about not wearing a mask inside the gas station. He says before he could even respond, get a couple words out, he was sprayed with an unknown chemical coming from an aerosol can that he believes was pepper spray or something similar.
I didn't even have the time to engage before the way that he was talking to me, before I realized it, like I'm so shocked that a guy actually talking to me like that, and before I got 2 words out, he hit me with that pepper spray. So I'm definitely sure he was looking to test that aerosol can on somebody.
Now, West Ellis police say the suspect is known to police, but so far he has not been arrested, but they think that he will be charged if he is arrested.
First came the pandemic, and hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers reportedly fled the city to escape the virus. And now there are growing concerns that residents are finding new reasons to escape the nation's largest cities. The first could be a lack of jobs. New analysis from job search engine Indeed reveals unemployment has risen the most in the largest metros. Major cities are also seeing bigger declines in job postings. San Francisco took a 37% hit, while Seattle and New York City dropped by 34%. In New York City, another wrinkle, as some residents are now fleeing because they no longer feel safe. Shootings were up 177% this July compared to last July. And more recently, residents complain about rampant homelessness and drug use, as hundreds of homeless were moved into 3 Upper West Side hotels to avoid the spread of coronavirus at shelters.
I'm actually looking to move out of the city of New York, hopefully next year. I can't see living here under these conditions where I'm afraid to walk out.